The night was thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of leaves underfoot as a lone black woman drove down a narrow forest road. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, heart pounding with a mix of fear and disbelief. Just minutes ago, headlights had appeared behind her, blinding, urgent, and unrelenting. As the car slowed, she realized they weren't just ordinary drivers. Cops had pulled up, their intentions unclear, and the tension in the air was palpable. Every instinct screamed for caution, yet she felt trapped, surrounded by shadows and uncertainty. Suddenly, a low growl cut through the stillness, and her breath caught in her throat. From the edge of the woods, a sleek, midnight black panther emerged, its eyes glinting in the moonlight. The creature moved with an almost supernatural grace, circling protectively, as if sensing the danger she could not escape. Was it a wild animal or something more? And why did it appear at the exact moment she needed help the most? The forest seemed to hold its breath, time stretching as tension mounted between her, the officers, and this mysterious guardian. Every step, every movement, felt amplified, the stakes higher than ever. Would the panther protect her, or was it about to change everything in ways she could never predict? One thing was certain: this night on the forest road was far from ordinary, and the answers to her survival hung on a knife's edge. The story is just beginning, and the suspense is far from over. Her mind raced as she glanced at the panther, its powerful muscles tensing with every movement, eyes never leaving the officers. She had always been cautious, but nothing in her life had prepared her for a moment like this. The forest road seemed endless, lined with towering pines that blocked the moonlight, turning the night into a shadowy maze. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, even her own shallow breaths felt magnified. She thought back to earlier that evening, a day that had started so normally. Running errands in the city, she had no idea that a routine trip would somehow lead her to this isolated stretch of road. Stories of strange happenings in the nearby woods had always circulated, whispers about people disappearing or odd sightings late at night. She had dismissed them as local legends, but now, with the cops blocking her path and a midnight panther silently circling, those stories didn't feel so far-fetched anymore. The officers stepped closer, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Their faces were tense, unreadable, their voices clipped as they called for her to stop. She raised her hands, heart hammering, unsure of what to say. The panther's low growl seemed to ripple through the clearing, almost as if it carried a warning. She couldn't understand why the animal had appeared, or why it seemed drawn to her. Questions churned in her mind. Was the panther a guardian, or a sign of something far stranger? Could she trust it, or was danger coming from every direction? The night stretched on, thick with uncertainty. As the standoff continued on, nothing would be the same once the next moment arrived. The tension on the forest road was unbearable, each second stretching longer than the last. The woman's pulse raced, but she forced herself to stay calm, knowing that any sudden movement could provoke the officers or worse. The panther, she noticed how the moonlight glinted off their badges, how the flashlights jittered slightly with their hands. There was a story behind this confrontation, something unspoken that hung between them like a thick fog. From another angle, the officers were equally on edge. They had been called to investigate suspicious activity in the area, reports that didn't add up. But the moment they saw her car, something felt off. Their radios crackled faintly, carrying messages that made little sense. One of them glanced at the shadows at the edge of the trees, a fleeting sense of unease passing over his face. He couldn't explain why his gut told him this situation was unlike any other he had faced. Meanwhile, the panther prowled silently, a living shadow that seemed to respond to her fear and courage in equal measure. She could feel the heat of its presence, the weight of its gaze, and a strange sense of connection pulsed through her. It was as if the animal understood the danger before her, sensing threats that even trained eyes might miss. Her thoughts drifted to questions she had never dared to ask. Why did she feel an inexplicable bond with this wild creature? Were the officers truly a threat, or were there forces in the forest she couldn't see? Every step, every flicker of movement in the darkness, added layers to a story that seemed larger than herself. The night had only just begun, and the forest was far from giving up its secrets. The air grew colder, the forest around her alive with sounds she had never noticed before, twigs snapping under unseen feet, distant rustling that could have been the wind or something more. Her car's engine idled, yet she didn't dare move, knowing any sudden action might trigger an irreversible chain of events. The officers' voices grew sharper, more demanding, calling out commands that made her heart pound even faster. She tried to keep her hands visible, tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. The panther shifted its stance, muscles coiled like springs, eyes locked on the officers. Its growl deepened, vibrating through the night and through her bones. She could feel the raw power emanating from the creature, a force both terrifying and protective. The woman knew instinctively that this was the moment everything could change. That one wrong step from anyone, the officers, herself, or even the panther, could tip the balance. From the other side, the officers exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Something about the shadows, the silence, and the sudden movements of the panther made them hesitate. The forest seemed to press in on all sides, an unseen presence amplifying the tension. Every second stretched to the breaking point, Her mind raced with questions and fear, but also with a strange clarity. She realized that whatever happened next would define not just this night, but something larger she couldn't yet understand. The growl of the panther grew louder, the officers' flashlights trembling as their grip on reality wavered. She could see it the moment before chaos, the thin line separating safety from danger, and the unknown force that hovered between them all. The night held its breath, and everything teetered on the edge. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, a sudden flash of light pierced the darkness from deeper in the forest, momentarily blinding everyone. The woman instinctively ducked, heart hammering, while the panther hissed, its fur bristling. A figure emerged from the shadows, a stranger, cloaked in a dark jacket, moving with unnerving confidence. The officers instinctively reached for their radios and weapons, but something about the newcomer made them pause. The stranger didn't speak at first, only scanning the scene with sharp, calculating eyes. Then, in a calm but commanding voice, they said something that made her freeze. Words that suggested they knew more about the panther than any natural explanation, and more about her than she could imagine. Questions swirled in her mind. How did this person know her? Why were they here? And what did they want? The panther's growl deepened, a warning aimed at both the officers and the stranger. Yet, strangely, it did not attack. Its attention split between protecting her and watching the newcomer. The forest seemed to contract around them, shadows twisting unnaturally, as if reacting to this new presence. Every instinct screamed that the situation had shifted. The original confrontation with the officers was no longer the only danger. Now the woman faced a layered threat: the officers' uncertainty, the wild power of the Midnight Panther, and this enigmatic figure whose intentions were unreadable. Fear, confusion, and adrenaline collided inside her. The night had grown darker, the stakes higher, and the answers she desperately sought felt farther away than ever. The forest held its breath again, ready to reveal its next secret, but not yet. The forest seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. Tension so thick it felt like it could be sliced with a knife. The woman's hands shook, but she forced herself to stand tall, facing both the officers and the stranger. The panther shifted beside her, eyes glowing, muscles coiled, ready to strike at a moment's notice. The stranger stepped closer, revealing a badge that neither the officers nor she had seen before, an official mark that explained everything and nothing at the same time. "You're safe now," the stranger said, their voice steady, but the weight behind it made her realize this was far from over. The officers lowered their flashlights slowly, confusion and relief mingling in their expressions. The stranger explained that the panther wasn't just a wild animal, it had been trained to protect those in imminent danger, an unseen guardian that had silently watched over her. Every instinct she had felt the protection, the presence was real, and it had kept her alive tonight. The woman exhaled, relief washing over her in trembling waves, but it was short. From deeper in the forest, a series of low, menacing growls echoed, and she realized the panther was not alone. Her protector turned, ears flicking toward the dark trees, and the stranger's calm demeanor shifted to urgency. There were more of them creatures lurking in the shadows, more than anyone had anticipated. She looked at the panther, her heart racing again, and understood that while the immediate threat from the officers had passed, the forest still held secrets far more dangerous than she could imagine. The night was not yet over, and what had protected her so far might be the very thing that would teach